Alright, welcome to day 2 of the Grammar Bootcamp. We're looking at today the 8 parts of speech. If you go back all the way to your elementary school days, I'm sure that you can remember all 8 parts of speech, but it's been a long time ago, so maybe you're a little rusty. The 8 parts of speech are critical for everything that we do all the way from here on to the rest of the bootcamp, because everything depends on whether or not you know certain aspects of what these different parts of speech do. If you don't know what an adjective does or what it functions in a sentence, then you're not going to know what a participle does or what an adjective phrase or adjective clause does, because it all goes back to the basic rules of that part of speech. So I'm going to be going over this chart. It's going to be on my website. You can go ahead and download that and go through it. Go through it with me. So first of all, the first part of speech, very, very basic part of a sentence, is the noun. Alright, so there's different types of nouns. This list is not going to be exhaustive as far as every different type, just basically the ones that we're going to be using the most in class. You see there's proper and common. You definitely have to capitalize proper nouns. You don't have to capitalize common nouns. The basic difference is proper nouns are like names of places, titles of books, things like that you have to capitalize. Common nouns are just things like desk or pencil or car. Then you got abstract and concrete. Abstract nouns are things like love or patriotism or something. And remember that with abstract, you can't put that into a bag. You can't go out and just go buy some more patriotism or something. Abstract nouns are ideas. If you remember that the basic definition of a noun is a person, place, thing, or idea. And so that's where the idea comes into, is the abstract noun. Concrete nouns are, think just like concrete. They're things that are tangible. They're things that you can touch or hold. Things that you can see, that you can experience with your 5 senses. Those are concrete nouns. And the next type of noun that we're going to cover is collective nouns. Collective nouns are the types of nouns that you can understand have a collection of things in them, like a herd or a flock or a team. And you know that by saying the word team, that there's multiple members of that team within that one word. Alright, so functions here, we went over the definition of what it is, but here's the key. A noun in your sentence can function in 5 different ways. It's got 5 different jobs that it can go and do in the sentence. So it's very versatile, and it's very important to the sentence for what it does. So obviously the first part is it can be the subject of the sentence. It can be all these initials here, I'm going to go over these. It can be the direct object. And I'll explain exactly what that is when we get to complements. So it can be the direct object of the sentence. It can be the indirect object. It can be the object of the preposition. Or it can be the predicate nominative. So 5 different ways that it can function in the sentence. And then I gave you some examples here of the nouns. Okay, a little bit later on, when we start getting to things like gerunds, or we start getting the noun clauses or whatever, once they take the place of that noun, they can do everything that a noun can do in the sentence. So we need to make sure that you memorize these 5 jobs that a noun can do. Alright, the next thing. Next part of speech is a pronoun. Okay, these are professional nouns. They get paid for what they do. No, not really. But they do a pretty good job of just taking the place of the noun. And thank God we have it, because if not, we'd have some really weird sentences, or you'd sound like you're talking in third person like all the time. So it's like if I said, Tim went to the store to get Tim a bottle of orange juice so Tim could have a glass. Well, why would I have to say Tim over and over and over and over again? What pronouns do for us is they substitute. Now remember that when they go to substitute for a noun, they've got to match exactly what they are substituting for. Kind of like in football. If I had my right guard who's 310 pounds, he's a blocker, he gets hurt, and he comes out of the game, well, I can't go sub him in for a 115-pound defensive back. I mean, that's just not going to work. I mean, you could try, but it's not going to work very well. Or in basketball, your point guard goes down. Well, you probably want to put another point guard in. There's no sense in having 5 centers on the court or 5 forwards on the court. You need to have the right man or the right woman for the job in that case. So here, what I would do is, instead of going through all of these, just like in sports, you're going to have a starter and you're going to have people coming off the bench and substituting. Well, Tim is our starter. So I'm going to leave that one in place because you got to know who is the sentence talking about. So from here, I'm going to go down, and once I get to here, I'll go, okay, Tim went to the store to get him a bottle of OJ so he could have a glass. So notice that these pronouns help us to stop always talking like a robot or talking to ourselves in the third person. If you don't believe me that it's pretty hard to do that, then just try it for a day. Try to go throughout the entire day without using any pronouns. Talk to yourself in the third person. You're going to be looked at very weirdly. All right, so you look here. There's different types of pronouns. I gave you a couple here already. Demonstrative, personal, reflexive, relative, possessive. The relative and possessor would be the two that we're going to use the most. Their job is to replace the nouns, just like that. And I'll give you some examples here, like I, we, he, she, it, they, them, his, hers, our. So there's some examples of pronouns, and thankfully we actually have those in a sentence. The next one is the adjective. Now, the adjective, you can still have proper and common just like nouns. The proper ones have to be capitalized. Just like when you say the American dream, well, American has to be capitalized because it's the name of a country. And so, even though you use it as an adjective, it still has to be capitalized. Common adjectives are like blue or 7 or things like that to describe nouns. Again, that is their actual job too, and that's what we want to really emphasize here, is that adjectives describe nouns or pronouns. That's what they do. They're also going to answer certain questions. Okay, they answer what kind, which one, how much, how many. We've got to make sure we memorize not only what it describes, but also what questions that they answer. That's going to benefit us later down the road. And so these are just some examples that my 6th period class had come up with from last year. So stupid, fast, slow, lethargic, blue, incredible, things like that would all be considered adjectives, as long as they're describing a noun or a pronoun in the sentence. All right, next up we have the verb. I'll have to hang out here for a second. All right, so the verb, action or linking. Every time that I go across a verb in a sentence, I'm going to ask the question, is it action or linking? Because as you'll see later on down the line, that it's incredibly important that we know that. Transitive or intransitive, helping or main. All right, so action or linking, very simple. Run would be an action verb. Linking verbs, as you notice over here, you can memorize this little name: is, am, are, be, was, were. These are your linking verbs: is, am, are, be, as in be, was, and were. Those are your main ones. You got a couple of exceptions like become and became, and then your 5 senses are also they can go either way. They can either be action or linking depending on the subject, whether or not the subject is physically doing that action. As far as transitive or intransitive, if you have a situation like he hit the ball, okay, and then you got he laughed. All right, well, he hit, action verb, he hit what? He hit the ball. We'll find out later on. This is our direct object. Well, the action transfers. That's what trans means. So this is a transitive verb because the action is moving from the subject to the object. Whereas if you look in this example, he laughed, that is still an action verb, but I don't have to have an object or anything to complete the meaning of that verb. Therefore, it's intransitive. Okay, so that's all that means, is that instead of the action moving like this one did, the action just stays with the subject, which makes it intransitive. All right. Helping and main is just like if it's a he has been, that's your helping verb, that's your main verb. Helping verbs are just the little verbs that are in front of the main verb. All right, number 5, adverb. Okay, usually I just think of it, adds to the verb. That's not all it does, but that does help you understand what it does. It adds to the verb. It describes verbs, adjectives, or adverbs. I mean, it can do the job for all 3 of those. It can describe any of those. Now, notice that it does not do the same thing that the adjective does. Even though they have the same job, they both describe things. They don't describe the same things. So that's important. And then the other very, very important part is what questions that they answer. They answer when, where, how, why, to what extent, and under what condition. So that's what these acronyms down here stand for. To what extent and under what condition. That'll be important when we come to phrases and we can come to clauses also. So you want to make sure you memorize those 6 questions. When, where, how, why, to what extent, under what condition. Now, the one-word adverbs typically will end in ly. So they're pretty easy to spot. And especially when they're describing that verb in the sentence or another adjective in the sentence, it's pretty easy to spot because the ly ending. All right, preposition. All right, best thing here is you're going to have to basically Google a list of prepositions because there are hundreds of them. It's not going to be beneficial to memorize all of them, but you should be able to be familiar enough with them where you can recognize them for what they are. Their basic job, though, in a sentence is they show a relationship between 2 things. For instance, like this pen. Okay, this pen is over the paper. Okay, and now it is under the paper. Now it is beside the paper. Well, over, under, beside, in front of, behind, all these are prepositions. They all show where 2 things are located in space in relation to one another. And so that's the general idea of what prepositions will do. And so if you notice here on the examples, that's what I have here. Prepositions start prepositional phrases. So we got to recognize what a preposition is so that when we come to phrases, you'll be able to find that very quickly and know where the prepositional phrase starts. All right, next one is conjunction. You might recognize this from your elementary school days. You probably want to go to YouTube and look up conjunction junction on Schoolhouse Rock. That'll certainly help you remember what they are. You got coordinating and you got correlative. Your coordinating conjunctions are your fanboys. For and nor, but, or, yet, so. Okay, again, that's for and nor, but, or, yet, so. Those are your main conjunctions. They're your coordinating conjunctions. Your correlative conjunctions are the not only and but also. That's your correlative. And then you also have some other things like however and therefore that are what's considered, depending on your English teacher, they're either adverbial conjunctions or they're conjunctive adverbs. It's the same thing. Okay, they're stronger than your ordinary conjunction. But their whole job is that they conjoin or connect parts of the sentence. Just like what we talked about in day 1 with the compound subject or the compound verb. What joins them together? Conjunctions. Like the word and or the word or. Okay, and or are part of your fanboys. That's what they do. They join 2 things together. They're like glue. Alright, and then you have interjection. Interjections are kind of like the black sheep of the 8 parts of speech. They're usually just hanging out there by themselves on the end of the sentence. They have their own punctuation even, but they're just like out there by themselves on an island. So if you notice here, they typically interject in the sentence and they show emotion or exclamation. Give you a couple examples here like, I failed the test. Well, is just sitting out here by itself. Okay, or crap, where did that bed come from? You know, like you're getting up in the middle of the night and you stub your toe. You might say something worse than crap, but whatever you say that comes out that's just a single word, that is a interjection. All right, so these are your 8 parts of speech. That's your basic gist right there. So come back for day 3, and we're going to start getting into complements. All right.